Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Jack and Max Sports Show. We're on for Sunday morning here from 8 to 10 with our football show, and we're going to be covering all your Northeastern local sports, New York, Boston, Philly. You can follow us live on Max Sports Facebook page. Just go to username at MacMan62 on Facebook search, and it will bring you right to us. Also, Google Mac and Jack Sports, and you'll find us live on YouTube and Twitch. And you can even see our past shows. Like, follow, and share, and subscribe where you can to help us keep growing. I'm Mac with my co-host, Jack Hirsch, the legendary boxing writer and also former president of the Boxing Writers Association and sports historian gatekeeper. How you doing today, my friend?
Mac, you and I are both suspicious guys. We're trying to get the Jets and Giants a victory any way we can. Either one at this point. I mean, I'm a Jet fan. You're a Giant fan, correct?
Correct.
Right. Whoever, I'm rooting for the Giants. You're even rooting for the Jets. Let's just have a New York victory.
I agree.
That's why we're kind of putting the new graphics on. We were supposed to be in all New York, just New York. But now notice the way we expanded to the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, the Patriots, who I don't have to tell you about their success, and New York State's best football team far the way, the Buffalo Bills.
Definitely.
So we're putting them on the graphics, too. If they weren't that good, we would have been extending maybe to Baltimore, beyond, going as far as we need to do. When the Jets and Giants start winning again, we'll have a production meeting, whether, the Patriots, Eagles are still going to be up there, but they will. The rest of Jordan fans, in Philadelphia and the Boston area, we're all one family.
Yes, I mean there are very big rivalries throughout. I mean, you're talking Patriots, Bills, Giants, Eagles, some of the oldest rivalries in the NFL. But I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, we represent the Northeast. We're going up against a lot of different cities across the country, and I like to represent the area, and this way we can get a lot more information, Jack, and reach a lot more people. So before we get to our football news and information, and we'll cover all the games today, we got Anthony Cervino I should say, from Fantasy Football Faceoff, our fantasy expert. He'll go over a few games with us too. But we got to get to the updates of last night, Jack. We got the Major League Baseball Championships, a huge fight last night. So I want to get on to that first. Let's go to MLB first, and we'll spend some time on the boxing right after that. It took some doing, Jack, but the Rays hold off the Astros. Their 3-game surge and win the AL American League pennant 4-3 in an exciting series. The Rays beating the Astros 4-2 last night. Randy Arozarena homers. He had a 2-run shot and in the bottom of the first, and he was the MVP for the series. Let's see, Lance McCullers, he struck out 7, was pulled after 3.5, allowing 4 hits and 2 runs. The Astros grabbed 2 runs in the 5th, and they're waiting right now. The Rays, the winner, are waiting for the Dodgers-Braves series as the Dodgers force a game 7, beating the Braves 3-1. The Dodgers getting all 3 runs in the first inning. Max Fried of the Braves gave up the runs, but settled down after that first inning. And so Kenley Johnson, he recorded the final 3 outs, grabbing the save, striking out the side. And the 7th game is tonight at 8:15, Jack. So we have another exciting series going to Game 7. I mean, what else could you ask for in the
People are saying, well, the Dodgers have the momentum. Now, momentum, I'm not a big believer in it in baseball. I think it means very, very little because momentum is only as good as what you do that day. A case in point would be the Dodgers are down 2-0 in this series, and then they score 11 first-inning runs against the Braves in Game 3 and rout them 15-1. But then they lose the next game, Game 4. So where was the momentum there?
Right.
And what happened yesterday? The Dodgers scored 3 runs in the first inning. So right there, the celebration is about to begin. They're going to force a Game 7. They're psyched. But the Braves load the bases in the second inning with no one out.
Yeah.
That's their chance to at least get a couple of runs, send a message they're very much in the game with a long way to go, and they don't score with the bases loaded, no outs. And that really, if there's a such thing as a turning point in the second inning of a game, that was really the turning point, because they got into the Dodger ace, Walker Buehler, and somehow they allowed him to slip out of it. So when you have an ace on the ropes, you got to cause some type of damage.
Yes,
and the
Jack.
Braves
Yes.
failed to do it, and Buehler settled down, handed it over to the Dodger bullpen. We have a game 7 tonight, which I don't have to tell you, game 7 can go any way. I expect the Dodgers to win. I kind of want the Dodgers to win because in the beginning of the year, I always jot down my prediction, and I picked the Dodgers to beat the Rays in the World Series.
And you're
good. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right on the edge of getting that prediction coming true, Jack. I think, again, the Earl Weaver once said, if you're going to hit in a double play, strike out, you know what I mean? But again, my concern with baseball has been in the last few years of always trying to hit the ball out of the park and not playing small ball. When you have the bases loaded and no outs, I mean, you need a hitter that can put the bat on the ball, get it to the outfield, at least get a sacrifice fly deep enough to score a run. And then, maybe bunting, maybe hitting and running, maybe double stealing. I mean, there's no pressure anymore, Jack, put on the defense of the opposing team or the pitcher. And if the pitcher's got to worry about other things happening, it kind of it throws off his concentration. I play baseball.
Matt, you're right. You like small ball. And what drives me crazy sometimes, these teams are putting on shifts on pull hitters. And
Yes.
They're leaving one side of the field basically open. All you have to do is basically get your bat on the ball, direct it to that side of the field, and a bunt, a weak little tap,
Sure.
a grounder, and the batter's going to be at first base.
Sure.
The lack of bat control, but that starts in the minor leagues. You're not going to make a hitter into something he's not. It drives me crazy when managers have a batter sacrifice bunt who's never been asked to do that before, really, all season long. And now he's in a big spot and they're asking him to bunt. Some guys just can't bunt. Most guys can't bunt.
Yeah,
you're right. Play to your personnel, which begs to differ. These shifts that they're putting on, are they going to outlaw that in time the way they do the zone defense in basketball?
I think that I don't think that you should change rules for people or players. I think that the players have got to adjust. And Jack, I mean, when I played baseball way back when, we actually practiced bunting. We went up to the plate. I mean, I had a little bit of pop in my back. I could drive the ball, but I was taught how to bunt. And in certain circumstances, you've got to be able to control your bat. You say, I agree with you 100%. And you've got to be able to wait that extra second or do an inside-out swing and drive the ball to the other field, to the other side of the field. And for them not to be teaching that down in the little leagues, up through the minors, in college, whatever, it's a shame. Because what it does, it limits you as a batter. It limits you as an offense. And all you got to do is they talk about the launching point. All you got to do is put the bat on the ball. And who's more valuable to a team? To me anyway, Jack, I think DJ LeMahieu of the Yankees is more valuable than Aaron Judge because he's always on base. He's always making contact with the ball. He's always scoring runs. I mean, not that I don't like Aaron Judge. I'm just saying that, listen, I know you can hit home runs. You can hit 50 home runs, but you're getting up, Jack, 160. If you just do 160 times 3 times, if they play 160 games, that's almost 500s of bats, and you're hitting 50 home runs. That's not a good average. You've got to be able to put the bat on the ball.
Well, the mentality of baseball is flat out stupid. Okay, someone like Billy Beane, who just stepped down as the Oakland Athletics GM, he's involved with this corporate group with the Red Sox owner, ironically. He saw the sense behind just getting on base. If a batter gets up 4 times during a game, he goes 0 for 2 but gets 2 walks.
Right.
I mean, especially if the bases are empty, those
Sure.
walks as good as a hit.
Sure is.
Every bit as good as a hit. But we look at a guy's batting average. We don't look at his on-base percentage. We don't look at the variables. If a guy gets up 5 times and he gets hit by a pitch as well, and he's on base 3 out of 5, that's a heck of a game.
Definitely.
Even if he strikes out twice, it's
yes. I agree, Jack. And again, and if you're playing small ball, you walk, you maybe steal second, you maybe do a hit and run, whatever the case may be. I mean, this is basic baseball that you can score a run without getting a base hit, Jack. And people,
Matt, but we're getting a little carried away off with the big games. I know how passionate you are about that philosophy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because you're truly old school. You want to see the players do so and so. And it drives you crazy when a team lets a game get away because they don't do things in the baseball sense to squeeze out every run, up to their capabilities. But getting to the Tampa Bay Houston game yesterday, we had criticized the Tampa Bay manager, Kevin Nash, in game 6, thinking he took out Blake Snell too early. Blake Snell, his ace, was upset about it, as well. Yesterday, He had Charlie Morton on the mound, and Charlie Morton entered the game with a tremendous distinction, a major league record. He had won 3 postseason elimination games. That means what either team, was going to win that game, like a game 7 scenario, a deciding game scenario. Yesterday was the 4th one he won, major league record. But he was taken out, the same way basically that Blake Snell was, and Kevin Nash deferred to his bullpen. Well, yesterday it worked.
Right.
So if we're going to criticize Kevin Nash over game 6, maybe he could have stood with him longer. The feeling yesterday could have been, well, maybe he could have stayed with Charlie Morton a little longer too, because Charlie Morton was pitching really, really well, showing no signs of faltering. But I guess it comes down to managers knowing their personnel, so on, that got him there. I remember the 1987 World Series, Frank Viola, New York guy. The Minnesota Twins have a 2-run lead going into the last inning, okay? And he takes out Viola and puts in his closer, Jeff Reardon. Viola was sailing along very nicely and could have pitched the 9th inning, and most of us would have continued with him in the 9th inning. But the manager, Tom Kelly, said, well, Jeff has been our closer all year long. This is the way we've been doing it all year long.
Right.
But sometimes that backfires as well. Gene Mach, who's considered a great manager by a lot of guys who played for him, like Tim McCarver, and Don Zimmer even said Gene Mach was the best manager he came across. In 26 years of managing, Gene Mach never went to a World Series.
Right.
And especially a game 5 against the Boston Red Sox when they were up 3-1 in the 1986 season to see who'd go to the World Series. He took out his closer, Mike Witt. I mean, not his closer, his starter, Mike Witt.
Yeah.
And he went to the bullpen, made a couple of switches. It backfired. And ironically, Joe Torre was an Angel broadcaster that season. It's hard to believe, considering the success Joe Torre had later. Joe Torre didn't like the moves at all. He said so in the offseason, but later he shrugged and said, well, but that's the way he was doing it all year long, so I understand it.
Right.
We're not around the personnel, you and I, Mac. We're really not. We have an idea how the game should be played, what we'd like to see, and so on. And especially out-of-town teams. We see a lot of the Yankees and Mets, so we have a better idea. Like we know, you mentioned DJ LeMayo. We know of all the players on the Yankee team, he probably has the best bat control. If you need anyone to bunt, hit to the opposite field, he's the guy most likely, to deliver if that's what we really want, even though they play a shift on him at times as well. But some players just, it's out of their element to do certain things.
Well, Jack, you're right. If we're going to blame him for the loss, we got to give him credit for the win. So you know,
Kevin Nash, yeah.
it did work for him last night. So what we got is we got the Dodgers and we got the Braves tonight at 8:15. We'll see who the Rays will be playing in the World Series. And there was a big boxing matchup. We're going to get to the football right after at 8:30. But in the big boxing matchup of the year, you know, Lopez versus Lomachenko for the undisputed lightweight crown. Lopez won a unanimous decision. Everyone pointed to Lopez's power. But last night, Lopez showed some boxing ability, Jack. I mean, surprisingly, I don't know if Lomachenko was thinking about this. Maybe he thought that Lopez would come out swinging and that maybe he just was going to play defensively. But Lopez came out and he boxed a good match for at least the first 5 rounds. He was definitely outpointing Lomachenko. Lomachenko put up a little bit of a comeback in the later rounds. The 12th round, Lopez kind of hurt him and with a left hook. And Jack, your thoughts on this fight? How much it meant and how good Lopez can be?
I picked Lopez to win going into the fight. I mean, I thought Lopez's power would be the big difference, and ultimately he would nail Lomachenko in the later rounds. The way Lomachenko fought was kind of puzzling to me. He basically gave up, you know, several rounds in the early going. He was very weary of Lopez's power. He'd move away from him, and Lopez was boxing beautifully. He was taking what Lomachenko was giving him.
Right.
Lomachenko was backing up. Lopez was doing enough to put rounds in the bank. He was like the man that was saving his money, putting every paycheck in the bank because he could live off the other things. And by the time we got to the midway point, Lomachenko was in a real hole. He really had to come on strong. It reminded me of the Sugar Ray Leonard Marvin Hagler fight in 1987. Right. And Hagler basically gave away the first 4 rounds. He did very little. And then he was playing catch up, you know, all fight long. And Lomachenko really did start to come on in the second half, landed a lot of good shots. Lopez hung tough. In the last round, Lopez was brilliant the way he answered the call and took it to Lomachenko and so on. But I think Lomachenko, being so wary of Lopez's power and not doing much in the early rounds, that indirectly lost him the fight. I say indirectly because the judges' scorecards were way off base. I mean, simplifying it on a rounds basis, because I don't know how many of our viewers can relate to the 10-point must system. One judge had it 8 rounds to 4 for Lopez. Another had it 9 rounds to 3 for Lopez. And the third had it a ludicrous 11 rounds to 1 for Lopez. So even had Lomachenko done more earlier, won a couple of more rounds, apparently it wouldn't have been enough on the official scorecards one way or the other. And that happens so much. The right guy gets the decision, and it was a close fight. In my view, that could have gone either way. It could have been called a draw. You could have given Lopez a small edge in the fight. But the wide disparity in the cards, it just taints what was a very good fight and a great event.
You know, Jack, we had a preview of the boxing matchup, and we had Dennis Rappaport and Don Majeski on, and we got into that a little bit about the judges and how there really isn't a judging association where there are certain people in this group that are experienced, that they pay to be judges, and they look at their experience and how good they are and stuff like that. They pretty much anybody can judge a fight. I was reading somewhere where somebody's wife actually was a judge. It was ludicrous. So I mean, do you believe? I mean, you know, you being a boxing writer and the former president of the Boxing Writers Association, do you believe that there should be pressure put on these conferences and to have some kind of like they do with NFL referees? You have people that are actually hired, even though it's a part-time job. They are actually paid, and they go through a system. They have to meet certain qualifications to be a referee. Is it time for boxing to do that, Jack?
Well, I believe so. What they tend to do is assign judges, referees on a rotating basis. What didn't give yesterday a good look is that two of the judges are from the New York area, and Lopez is from the New York area. But the judges assigned Steve Weisfeld, a great judge. He's from New Jersey. Julie Lederman from New York. She's an honest judge, even though she did a horrendous job of only giving one round to Lomachenko all fight long. And then, but two of the three judges are from Lopez's neck of the woods. Imagine having two judges from the Ukraine area where Lomachenko is from.
Sure.
That wouldn't have been acceptable. You know, so much of the time it's subjective. It really is. I mean, so much of the time, because we get certain fights where it'll be a 12-round fight. 6 of the rounds will be obvious who won it. You shouldn't have any question at all. And then the other 6 are going to be close. And
Right.
the judge, what they look for in judges is uniformity. You want them to agree on as many rounds as possible. But when you look at the end of 12 rounds, and if you see something like the judges have only agreed on 5 of the 12, that kind of wonders about the other 7. And unlike replay in other sports,
Right.
you can't have a replay and decide who won a round. Because I'll tell you, Mac, if you and I watched a close round, we'll keep changing our mind every time we see it. We'll say one day one guy won the round. We'll watch the same round the next day. And it's so subjective.
You're
It
100%.
really is. But we would have, listen, had the scoring been close yesterday and gone to Lopez, it would have had a much better feel to it.
Yes, because now what people are talking about is instead of the great fight, how it was scored, and that takes away from the fight itself. Yeah, it's just like in any sport where the umpire ends up taking over the game or referee makes a call that we all saw live, not just on replay, but we saw live that it was an incorrect call. And Jay, I don't know how boxing could fix this, but to do what the NFL does and Major League Baseball does, to hire a group of people that go from fight to fight and they score and they judge the fight as not as a unit agreeing with each other, but enough experience, enough knowledge of the boxing. And this way we can't say, well, it's a personal thing, as you mentioned, going to Russia and having Russian judges. People would be suspicious if Lomachenko, suppose last night it went the other way, it was in Russia, and Lomachenko won the fight, people would be outraged right now. So I agree, and I know Majeski said a lot about this, Don Majeski said a lot about this, and he's really passionate about it. They have to get judges qualified and some kind of association and pay them.
They should have what they do with umpires in Major League Baseball. They have the very best umpires work the World Series, the big events. They don't rotate the way they do in boxing. That certain judges get this assignment, that assignment, and the judges and referees are rarely held accountable in boxing. They could have a dreadful performance, and they're going to be back. Listen, I don't mean to trash Julie Lederman. I was very close friends with her father, Harold, okay? Right. And I'm not saying she's a bad judge. I'm not saying that at all, okay? She just had a terrible evening last night. And there's got to be some accountability for that. I mean, I don't mind a judge sitting down, watching the replay with the members of the commission and saying, you want to know something? I should have had it closer.
Yeah.
I missed this. Because judges are human. They have off nights once in a while. You shouldn't have it in a major fight like this.
Sure. I agree.
Off nights once in a while. And we could sometimes forgive them. If a judge is going to score 50 championship fights and be very accurate on 49 and then be a little off on 1, we're upset about it. And it's bad for the fighter that, who got the short end of the judging stick. But there's no accountability. Some judges turn in a mediocre performance time and again. And I'm not saying Julie's one of them, but there has to be accountability.
Quick check on the undercard. I watched I watched most of the undercard, and I was impressed with 30-year-old Randall, who he has a great story. You know, he went to prison for a few years, and he came back out. He lost a couple of his children, which is very sad. But he really looked good. I mean, he's not. I don't think we spoke before the show that he's at the level of the contenders yet, but he showed a lot of promise last night. He went up against a very aggressive fighter, Rivera, who was putting pressure on him a lot in the beginning. He kind of did what maybe Lomachenko wanted to do. He felt him out a little bit, and then he turned on the jets, and he just started tagging Rivera, where Rivera started backing up at the end of the fight. So I really enjoyed watching that, and I'm looking forward to see if Randall can make in the next year.
Mac, you're a bigger fan than I am. You're talking about a 6th rounder. I mean, I'll confess, I tuned back and forth to catch the ball game was in a critical stage.
Right.
Too at that point, but
yeah, I'm always looking.
Like you say something that's interesting when someone has a story,
right?
A real storyline that increases the marketability for later on. They get some more wins. The story becomes much more profound.
Sure.
And we kind of keep a little more of an eye on that fighter who's had a rough background. I don't mean a rough background just growing up in a tough neighborhood where people tragically have been shot, so on, but has a personal story,
right?
Okay, to tell what they've been through, the adversity they faced. They all of a sudden become an underdog, and as an underdog, syndrome as well.
Yeah.
But there was some good fights. There was Edgar Berlanga scored his 14th 14th, 15th straight first round knockout.
Right.
All his fights in his pro career so far, he's a super middleweight Edgar Berlanga from the New York area. He's knocked out everyone in the first round so far.
Right.
It's something like the 6th highest first round knockout streak in boxing history to start a career. Now, does it mean anything in the long run? It doesn't mean a thing.
Right.
And not a thing, because Edgar Berlanga, I think, understands he's going to have to go round sooner or later. And if he's thrown in a very tough distance fight, a 10-rounder, all those first-round knockouts aren't going to be a blessing. They're going to be his undoing.
Right.
Because all of a sudden, he's going to have to answer the bell for the 7th round, and he never, after having never gone more than one round in a fight, then it's really going to be gut check time. That's when you really know how good a fight is, not just because he runs, inferior fighters out of the ring.
Yeah, Jack. I love watching the younger fighters, just like I love watching. A lot of people don't like watching NFL preseason games. I love watching them because I guess like the minor leagues. You get to see somebody that is not where they're going to be in the end, where maybe they have a chance at becoming something special later on. And I love watching the beginnings of people. And Bob Arum would be wise to make sure he holds on to Randall, I think. And I think he's.
You want to get Randall on this show? We could get him on. You could ask him a ton of questions.
Well, there you go. I would
probably. I don't know people lining up to interview him right now, but that was great exposure yesterday for him and all the fighters on the undercard, because it wasn't a pay-per-view event. ESPN heavily publicized this. The only problem that they ran into, unfortunately, was that the ball games, especially Game 7, the Astros and the Rays had to begin the same, time, was going opposite it. That was unfortunate, okay?
Jack, we're going to start turning the football show to football now. We got our special guest coming up here, Anthony Cervino. He's with Fantasy Football Faceoff. Great show he has on there. So if you get a chance, go on there and check him out over there. He does more than fantasy. He talks about the games themselves and the matchups, and we're happy to have him on today. Thank you for coming on today, Anthony. We appreciate having you.
Hey, thanks for having me again, guys. How are you?
Oh,
Good
doing all
morning.
right. We watch. Of course, we've been talking about the major league, championships, big boxing match last night. We had to go over that a little bit just to see, well, we had to go over it and cover it a little bit because there were some big games in that big fight. But of course, we're here to talk about football, and we bring you in, and there's a few questions I want to talk about with you for fantasy first, and then we're going to get to the three or four biggest games I think that we're coming up this week. Now, with the Dallas situation, Dak gets hurt, Andy Dalton steps in, and I don't know how many people had Andy Dalton on their team, and I imagine people rushed to put him on their team. When somebody like Dak Prescott, who is a very dynamic football player, can get you a lot of fantasy points, gets hurt and they replace him with Andy Dalton, who's mainly a pocket quarterback. He depends a little bit on a play action pass, made some great throws last week against the Giants in crucial times. But do you think that this will hurt some of the Cowboy fantasy players and help some of them? For instance, Anthony, if the wide receiver crew, I mean, Dak was really throwing the ball. He throws the ball over the field. Zeke is almost an afterthought. With Andy Dalton coming in, does that change it more towards Zeke and away from the wide receivers?
I think Andy Dalton for this Cowboys team, when I say this Cowboys team, coming into the year, you knew Mike McCarthy, he was going to air it out, and we were going to see maybe a little bit less of Ezekiel Elliott. And then with all the injuries on the offensive line and all the injuries on that defense, you can't just throw the football and get into these shootouts, because what we've seen is Dallas go down 7 and 14 points a game with that method, because you just don't have the same offensive line in the defense. With Andy Dalton is going to force Mike McCarthy and the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, to feature Ezekiel Elliott a little bit more, slow the game down, because you protect a weak defense by keeping that other offense off the field. So I think Dalton's going to help Ezekiel Elliott. I'm a little bit worried about how much volume there's going to be for the three wide receivers that are fantasy relevant, because if Dalton's not throwing 40, 45 times a game like Dak, there's going to be fewer targets. But this offense should be fine. Andy Dalton is good enough to be at least 75% of what Dak Prescott could be. If you go back to Andy Dalton earlier in his career, his first 5 years in the league, he did not have a losing season, including 4 straight years with double-digit wins after his rookie year. This guy's a good quarterback. I think he just fell victim to the Cincinnati Bengals. And no, I wouldn't put it past Andy Dalton if he can kind of rejuvenate his career like a Carson Palmer did at the end.
Jerry Jones said during the week, and I had no idea what he was talking about, but he said with Dak Prescott being injured, we might have to readjust our expectations. What did he exactly mean, readjust our expectations?
Jerry thought this was going to be a Super Bowl year. Maybe now they a playoff berth with Andy Dalton, because without Dak, I don't think they can make any type of a Super Bowl run unless this defense just suddenly comes together, and it's not. So I think that's what Jerry Jones meant.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jerry Jones just likes to talk.
They can still win that division.
Oh, they definitely could. I mean,
they could win it at 7-9.
Yeah. Could. I mean, that division is wide open and for the taking, especially.
They're in first place, actually.
Between the Cowboys, I still think the Eagles will bring it together at the end of the year, but we'll see. With Dalton now, if you have your fantasy team and would you pick up Andy Dalton, Anthony, for at least a bench player or something like that? And if some matchups favor Dallas against a weak defense.
You might need if you had Dak Prescott at a quarterback, and I had him in a few leagues, I didn't carry a backup. I will worry about the bye week when it happens. So I'm on the waiver wire looking at guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's a top 10 fantasy quarterback. I'm picking up Dak Prescott. Gardner Minshew's out there in a lot of leagues, and you kind of just have to stream the best matchup. Almost take the same approach as you do with a defense.
Right. That's a good point. If with the big game, there's a big quarterback game going up. Two legends that are playing currently. You got Brady and Rodgers. Who is the best pick up for that game? If you were doing, say, the fantasy duel, or DraftKings, and you were playing that team, who would you want on as your starting quarterback, Anthony?
Probably Aaron Rodgers. Out of that game, Aaron Rodgers. Packers defense, they were good, and so was the Buccaneers defense. But I think they rely on Aaron Rodgers a little bit more than they do on Tom Brady in Tampa Bay.
Okay.
But it's close. You're really splitting hairs. Both of them have, really good weapons around them. They both can run the football. It's just a matter of, is one going to throw 2 or is one going to throw 3?
Definitely. And I think what you said there with the key is the defense. I think the Packers defense has a little bit of an edge. So let's take a look at some of the big games, Anthony. We got Cleveland at the Steelers. This is Cleveland's big chance to take a step up into being a legitimate contender, not only in the, in their division, but in the AFC itself. I read earlier that Beckham was sent home because he was sick. I don't know if he's playing or not. I haven't read nothing about that. We know that Chubbs is hurt and that Hunt is still a good running back. We got Ben Roethlisberger who seems to be doing a little bit of a comeback. Connors is playing well. They got a great rookie. Do you see this game as Cleveland's chance to step up to Pittsburgh's level?
I think it has to be because, this isn't just a hyped up Browns team like it was last year who fell on their face. They're 4-1. They won 4 straight games. They're scoring over 30 points a game in their 4 straight wins. And beating the Colts last week, that was the game that I was focusing on last week. And, if Cleveland emerged a winner, I was going to really buy into them. And I think Cleveland can go into Pittsburgh and win this game. OBJ and Jarvis Landry will both play today.
Okay.
But Anthony, Baker Mayfield reportedly has really bad ribs. And the Cleveland coaching staff was debating whether to actually sit him out for this game. But he's insisting on playing. He'll have the rib protector, all that. And is it going to really affect his mobility to a great degree? Is it a question of just gutting it out? Because he's a running quarterback when he has to be. So how much is that going to affect him his ribs are really in bad shape?
Any type of ribs injury is painful because breathing hurts. And when you're a quarterback and if you're trying to run out of the pocket and maybe try to push a guy off you, you're going to be in pain the whole game. But if Baker goes down, they have a really good backup in Case Keenum. And Case Keenum played for Kevin Stefanski back in Minnesota. Keenum led that Vikings team to the playoffs. So if Baker Mayfield does go down, I think they have a good enough backup to hold on.
He did a good job at Minnesota, but when he went to Denver, Case Keenum, it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, Anthony, I was watching I'm listening to some people talking about Baker, and it seems that the running game is what is helping Baker the most. That when it falls on his shoulders, he still has his accuracy problems. I really believe that if Cleveland's going to really get up there, Baker's got to get that accuracy under control because there's going to be teams that are going to stop that running game. And if he can't get that accuracy going, I don't know if the Browns have a legitimate shot.
Nobody's really been able to stop that running game yet, even without Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt still putting up some pretty good games. You're not going to win this league like Baker Mayfield, if he's throwing 30 times a game. They're not going to win a lot of games. We've seen that in his history. And that's really anybody. Look at Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill right now is playing like, NFL MVP caliber football with his touchdown to interception ratio since coming over to Tennessee last season.
But
that's all Derrick Henry.
Yeah. And that's all the scheme. Definitely. I agree with that.
Derrick Henry or is that coaching?
That's Derrick Henry.
Okay.
And it's the same thing in Cleveland.
And a great offensive line, too, you could add to that. That line is something else. Okay, so we got the Rams and the 49ers coming up. The Rams look like they're moving back up to where they were a couple years ago. The 49ers look like they're a little bit in trouble, Anthony. Garoppolo gets benched with 3 interceptions. Their defense hasn't been as good as last year. The Rams' offense is clicking, and Goff looks like he's back to form with a good running game. Who do you give the edge to on this? I mean, the Rams can solely get into second place mode, at least behind the Seahawks. And the Niners, if they don't win, I think they could be in a little trouble.
Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think he should have played last week. They benched him in the half because he wasn't healthy. He couldn't plant the back foot. You can tell he was favoring that injured ankle. And it was just a bad game altogether for San Francisco. The Rams, we're going to find out if they're real or not. Their 4 wins are all over the NFC East.
Yeah.
And I know you can only play what is on your schedule, but when you're 4-1 and you beat the worst division in football and it's not close, I do have question marks. Jimmy Garoppolo was 3-0 as a San Francisco starter against the Rams. George Kittle slices the Rams up, in 5 out of 6 career games. He's gone for over 79 yards in all of those games. And I think if San Francisco gets back to what they do best, run the football and only allow Jimmy Garoppolo to throw when he has to, they have a really good shot of winning this game at home, and people aren't going to expect it.
Well, I think the Rams are for real. They won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The question is, are the 49ers completely sold on Jimmy Garoppolo being their franchise quarterback?
I don't think so.
Is it just that he's playing hurt with the bad ankle? And were they serious about Tom Brady, or was that just rumors going around because Brady was originally from the San Francisco area?
They say they weren't serious, but I don't believe it. Because if you're an organization and you say, yeah, we really did want Tom and we didn't get Tom, and then you're stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo, you can't really come out and tell the truth there. And I don't believe that they are sold on Jimmy Garoppolo.
One of the great stories.
Absolutely not.
One of the great stories no one talks about now at all. When Peyton Manning was a free agent, Pete Carroll paid him a visit immediately, a surprise visit. Peyton Manning didn't meet with him then. And he had Russell Wilson as his quarterback. But he was wanting to meet with Peyton Manning, certainly not to be a backup. And no one talks about that anymore. And no one made a big fuss about that. So you never know what
you got to realize, Jack, Russell was pretty young back then. They weren't sure what Russell Wilson was capable of doing. And you got Peyton Manning sitting out there. I would talk to him too. And I agree with you, Anthony. I think really they were interested in getting Tom Brady. That's a team built to win right now. So bringing Brady over there would have helped out.
Yeah, and Jimmy Garoppolo has a really good win-loss record in the regular season. So does Lamar Jackson. They don't show up in big games, and that's the problem. When you're talking about the teams that with Baker Mayfield and running the football to kind of open things up, that's most of the NFL. Most NFL quarterbacks need a running game.
Yeah, that's
you mentioned Lamar Jackson. Is it just a question of the defenses catching on to a style of play, containing them, or so on? Is he basically a 1 or 2 year wonder? Or is he built to last long-term as an NFL quarterback, provided he stays healthy, of course?
I think he's built to win long-term. I don't exactly believe in the weapons they put around him. Like they have a really good tight end in Mark Andrews, and they have Marquise Brown. But if I ask you to name another wide receiver, I bet you 9 out of 10 people can't. So I have an issue with the weapons at wide receiver. And I think systematically that team is not built to play from behind.
Yeah,
if you give them a lead, they're going to dominate that game. But if 100%. You're from behind, look at even Tennessee. These quarterbacks are going to have a hard time throwing you back into that game without making a mistake.
100% right, and I think they're asking Lamar Jackson to do something that he's not the best at. He's the best at running. They got a great running game. It's a shame right now that they're not just coming out and just slamming the ball down people's throats. We got the Chiefs and the Bills coming up. It looks like the teams in the NFL, and I know this is premature, Anthony, but it looks like they figured out what to do with Mahomes. The Patriots kind of exposed them a little bit. They rush the 3 or 4 front. They drop everybody else back in zone. And, the Raiders had some such success with that last game. The Bills coming up against them, they have the hard loss against the Titans, where the Titans clearly outplayed them. And I think this is a huge, huge game for the Bills. If they lose this game and the Patriots win, it's a question mark again. Are the Bills good enough to win the AFC East? And the Bills play the same basic defense as those other two teams do. They're kind of banged up a little bit. They're not running the ball good, and I don't think you can just depend on Josh Allen to throw you to a win. So, what do you think about that game, Anthony?
Both of these teams are coming off of hard losses. Kansas City had it was a heartbreaking loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, and in Buffalo, they got completely dismantled in Tennessee. This is a must-win game, really, for both of these teams, maybe more so for Buffalo, because we know Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid, they can bounce back from one or two losses. Josh Allen, he kind of – I'm not sold on Josh Allen as a big game player yet. I'm going to put him in that same conversation as Jimmy Garoppolo and Lamar Jackson because he can't do it by himself, like you said. And I don't exactly trust the running backs in Buffalo. Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, TJ Yeldon. There's a reason why they wanted to get Le'Veon Bell. There's a reason why they wanted to trade for Melvin Gordon last season.
But like Garoppolo, the Bills do look at Josh Allen as their franchise quarterback. I don't think they have any serious doubts about that. While the Niners appear to have some doubts about Garoppolo going forward. Le'Veon Bell, can he get back to the form he was in 2017 with the Steelers? Is he going to be an impact player with the Chiefs who haven't had a good rushing game? Or is he just going to be a contributor?
I don't think Le'Veon Bell's ever going to be the same guy as 3 years ago because he's 27, 28 years old. Can he make a difference in that offense? Yeah, I think Le'Veon Bell's going to be an impact player in Kansas City. I just don't see him as a 20 touch per game running back anymore. But if you give Le'Veon Bell 10 to 12 touches, he's still explosive enough and talented enough to go make plays. I mean, it's just a bad football team.
Did he make the right decision between the three teams, between the Dolphins, an up-and-coming team, the Bills, who are, a borderline Super Bowl contender to go to the Super Bowl champion Chiefs? What would you have advised him to do if you was an agent? He asked you which team I should go to. Which would you have selected for him?
Well, a couple of years ago when Le'Veon Bell selected the Jets, that was all about money. Mm-hmm. And the reports that I heard is that Miami was going to throw a bunch of money at him. It is clear that Le'Veon Bell made a business decision going to Kansas City, and he wants to go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think he can help Kansas City in the short passing game, the check off, maybe a couple screens. He's still got good hands. But I agree with you, Anthony. He's sure not what he was at Pittsburgh. And I'm still a little upset about him. Not that I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, that he did what he did under contract. And I would never sign anybody like that. But that's just me, and I don't own a team. So there you go. So Anthony, on the fantasy front, and I'm going to ask you one more question on that. We're a quarter way through the season. Is this the time, or do you wait to the halfway point to start making some moves on your team to either better it or get rid of some of the people that you don't need anymore?
Yeah, and I mean, the fantasy playoffs begin, they don't start when the NFL playoffs start. Your fantasy playoffs are usually week 13 or week 14. So you're realistically midway through your regular season right now. So if you believe you're a contender, maybe you're going to go make a move to make your team better. Now, if you're in a dynasty league, which is where the league rolls over every year, maybe you're making moves to acquire rookie draft picks
next season, right?
Yeah. You say week 13 to 14, the fantasy playoffs begin. That's very interesting. What happens if it's very late in the season and you have a team that they know what their status is basically going to be? Like Indianapolis, the year they won beaten after 14 games. And then they took their foot off the accelerator for the last couple of games rather than try to be unbeaten. How does that affect their fantasy standing, the players who are going to be rested maybe 20% more than they normally would during the year?
Usually, in most fantasy leagues, there is no playoff game in week 17. So your fantasy championship and the season ends in week 16 because week 17 is really that week where everybody's resting.
Well, to follow up on Jazz's question, suppose it's week 12 in the NFL. Which team is 12 and 12-0 or 11-1, and they decide to start resting their starters.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Then you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a good answer, Anthony. Anthony, again, thank you for coming on. It was great talking about just the matchups coming on, and we'll do that more
absolutely.
As the season goes on. Again, folks, go check out Fantasy Football Faceoff with Anthony Cervino. He's the host. He does a great job over there, one of the best experts in fantasy. And he also talks about the games and matchups, which was a great surprise to me. And Anthony, thank you again. We'll see you next week.
Thanks,
See you next week, guys.
Thank you very much. So there you go, Jack.
Good
Anthony
stuff.
Oh, great stuff. He's a very knowledgeable man. As you show him throwing stats
I
out.
regret I didn't ask him one question. Are the Jets and Giants going to win today? And
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
we'll save the
I
local.
mean, it's easy to say the Giants are going to beat the Redskins. The Redskins are nothing. But think of it the other way. If we're doing a show out of Washington,
Right.
Redskin fans, if we're going to win another game, if it can't be against the Giants, who else are we going to beat? I look at it that way too. Well, we're only playing the Giants. They haven't won a game. This is winnable for us.
Yes, I mean, listen.
Looking at it from a Giant perspective, they're looking at it from a Redskin perspective.
Sure.
And has there been a Dwayne Haskins sighting?
That's
Game. This was supposed to be the marquee matchup: Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins. I say that a little bit sarcastic because Daniel Jones is drafted number 6 overall. And Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, shame on them on First Take. They basically crucified the Giants for taking Daniel Jones number 6 and not jumping all over Dwayne Haskins. And there's got to be accountability when you make a big blunder like that. You can't just throw it out there, and then when history is proving it wrong, you have to take accountability, such as yours truly is going to do now, by saying the Chiefs are going to beat the Raiders easy last week, while you were saying the Raiders had a good chance to win. So I was off base, and apparently, the Raiders could be for real. Or maybe the Chiefs are just hitting a lull during the season, because even Super Bowl champs, they have a bad week.
Sure. Well, Jack, I always believe that when you have a team that's being built and they start believing in the system, start believing in the head coach, and you see that with the Raiders this year. Last year, it took Gruden a few years. We all know Gruden's a great coach, a very knowledgeable man in football, and knows how to get the team wound up and inspire the team. So I think what that is, Jack, is that the Raiders are starting to come in their own. I don't know if they're going to go to the playoffs this year, but they're sure in hell going to fight a lot of teams down to the wire. And I feel the same way about Miami. You watch Miami at the end of the year, Jack. They may not
love Brian Flores.
Yes.
Okay, the Dolphins, their coach. The Dolphins are headed in the right direction.
Right. And you watch them at the end of the year, and they're going to be giving teams fits. I mean, they're going to sneak up and beat a couple of teams. They may get a couple bad losses here and there, but that is a program going in the right direction.
Mac, giving teams fits. They're the ones last year, the last game of the season, they went into New England, and they upset New England, and that basically ended New England's season, even though New England was still in the playoffs. New England lost their bye. They lost their bye. So instead of having to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl, New England now had to win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl. And believe me, that has to be the most sickening feeling to a team. You're going to get a bye the next week and not play and be just 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. Now all of a sudden you're not getting the bye week. You know the feeling, Mac? That's like you're told next weekend you don't have to go into work.
Right.
And all of a sudden we screw up this show, or you screw something up, and you got to go into work.
That's true, right? Jack. That's true, Jack.
Even though the goal is the same, to throw, the best party possible, just the idea. You have to go, and you have to drive a longer distance. You're not having it on your home turf. You got to drive an hour and a half to get to the place with your extra week.
There you go.
And Miami did that. And early in the season, New England slaughtered them. I believe they beat Miami by something like 59-0 early in the year. And then Miami comes back and beats them. Miami was so bad early last year. The games were an embarrassment. I mean, they were losing by like 6 touchdowns a game.
Yeah, everybody's
terrible. And then they got it together and were competitive.
And as you remember, Jack, they were saying tank for Tua in Miami, and Miami Dolphins weren't having none of that. Not that they didn't get Tua, but they didn't give up. In fact, they started playing even harder at the end, and that's why I think Flores is a good coach, and that's why I thought Miami would do something this year.
And they got Tua anyway with the number 5 overall pick.
Right, right.
And teams are scared to take someone who's injury prone. Tua's
Sure.
off an injury. Instead of gambling or something and getting a talent like Tua, who potentially could be a great, great quarterback, they're so timid about the injury factor. So
Very
timid
true.
about that. And that's why some guys slip in the draft a bit, so on. And then their personality issues. And unless a guy really with a personality issue is going to be a hardcore criminal type, such as Lawrence Phillips was years ago from Nebraska. He went number 6 overall. He still went high, but people think normally he should have been a number 1 pick. They would justify some teams bypassing him then. But most of the time, take a chance. I mean,
Yeah.
guys were injury prone. It doesn't mean they'll be that way.
Well, Jack, I think Tua, that was a bad injury, Jack. That hip. I mean, it's not like he hurt his shoulder. He hurt his hip, which hurt his mobility, and a lot of teams were scared. The hips have a lot to do when throwing the football, especially deep. And I could understand why they were a little scared. But I agree with you. Hey, listen.
But they got him after all. They did
right,
get
him. And I agree. At least take a chance because they had a lot of draft picks. They got a lot of veterans this year. They really took a step in the right direction. And I'll be interested to see Miami at the end of the year what
I'm
they do.
going to tell you, some of these young quarterbacks drafted, Tua went number 5. Joe Burrow went number 1 to the Bengals. He's going to be a good one.
Right.
They're playing him off the bat. He's not sitting on the bench behind anyone. He's playing. He's getting better. The Bengals don't have a good team this year. They're not likely to turn it around and do anything that significant this year, even though they might win a few games. But they're playing him, and next year, the year after, by his 3rd year, he's going to be an elite NFL quarterback. Okay,
yeah,
he's going to get better with the experience. But at number 6 is interesting. The LA Chargers took Justin Herbert, who's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
He's making rookie mistakes and bad throws, but he's looking good.
Yeah.
He's looking very good. He's going to be a very good NFL quarterback. If you look at all the NFL teams, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, these teams have their quarterback in place.
I agree.
They really do. Some of them don't have a long-term solution, but a lot of them really have their quarterback in place, at least for the foreseeable future.
Definitely agree, Jack. What we're going to do right now, folks, is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our commercial break here. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. Stick with us. We'll be back on the other side, and we'll start breaking down all the games. Me and the great Jack Hirsch here. So go ahead and take your little break here, Jack. I'll take my little break, and we'll let the commercials go ahead and play through.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? We knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids tried at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
How we doing back? We're back from our little
man.
break. How we doing, Jack?
My
Great.
day is more stressful than yours, and let me explain why.
Go right ahead.
Okay? I mean, we both went on short sleep last night. You always go on short sleep.
Yes, sir.
I stayed up for the big fight. One thing you have to understand when there's a big boxing match, as soon as it ends, you don't get to sleep. Even when I go ringside to a fight and I get home,
Right.
I'm wired. I'm
Yeah.
wired. I can't just come home and get to sleep. I
Right.
got to check reports. I'm back, forth, back, forth. So you pay the price the next day normally, okay?
Sure.
So
Sure.
now I went on short sleep. You went on short sleep. You go to work. I don't know. As soon as this ends, I'm going to go out to jog for an hour.
Well, there you
Okay?
go.
I don't know how I'm going to physically feel. You never know how you feel that day. I do jog. I'm a former marathon runner. Former, like in long ago, I ran my good share marathons. But now I kind of try to do it for fitness, okay?
Sure.
You're going to be working. Your mind's not going to be on these games. You're going to see parts of them. You're going to review the tapes, the stats. You keep really attuned. It's amazing the way you keep on top of things. I'm going to get to watch it. I'm going to be in agony. And as the games go along, it's just not going to be going the way I like it. So I'm going to, I'm going to find other things to do. I'm going to send out some bills and this and that, and try to catch up on some emails.
Sure.
And watch the game as it's going by. And it's going to be the usual stuff. Halftime of the Giant Redskin game, it's going to have a 6-3 score, something, one of those sleep-inducing things. So I need the cup of coffee, to kind of jumpstart me right now.
Sure. And Jack, we haven't spoken about our matching shirts today. I mean, I didn't know that. Was it the wives that got together and maybe told us what to wear today, or is it just pure luck, Jack? That we both have-
Superstition. That means either the Giants or the Jets are going to win today.
Okay.
Now, we should debate this. One of them going to win? Are both of them going to win? Or is neither going to win? What do you think?
I would love for both of them to win. I think the Giants have a better chance today at winning than the Jets, but I would love to see both New York teams, in fact, all the local teams win today. I would love to see the Giants, Jets, Eagles, Bills, Pats all win today. But I think if you go just between the Giants and the Jets, I think the Giants' odds of winning are a little bit better than the Jets are this week, Jack. I mean, that team is in a lot of turmoil over there, and it has a lot more to do with the way the team is run than it does the actual players themselves. I kind of feel sorry for the Jets. It doesn't seem like they're going in any direction.
No.
They're just kind of going back and forth sideways and maybe regressing, where the Giants, at least there's a little hope with that new coaching staff and that they are at least a little competitive against some teams.
Well, what's not noticed? I mean, people are talking about Adam Gase getting fired. Dan Quinn was on the hot seat. He's not on the hot seat anymore. He got fired as coach of the Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
I never liked these in-season firings for an interim coach. Unless the relationship with the coach and the team is so poisoned, so bad,
right,
nothing is gained by getting an interim coach during the season like this. And when we're talking about the season, it's basically beyond hope.
Sure.
And what would be the purpose in the Jets case with Adam Gase?
What
would be the purpose in just firing him and getting a tentative interim coach? I can understand the Houston Texans with Bill O'Brien.
Right.
He started arguing with players like J.J. Watt. They were a playoff team last year. They still believe they can make a run at it. So they went with Romeo Crennel, great coordinator, for their team and the Patriots in the past. But Romeo Crennel also, was a head coach with the Browns. So he has that type of experience.
Yeah.
And it's more than just an interim tag. It's a coaching change. There's a difference between getting an interim coach and making a coaching change. The Texans have made a coaching change from O'Brien to Crennel, and they're not thinking of moving on from Romeo Crennel, who, by the way, is the oldest NFL coach in history at age 73.
Yeah.
I guess he's a kid compared to Joe Biden if he gets it.
Jack, I think in the Jets case, and I don't like coaches being fired midseason either, especially if you don't have a backup plan. I think the only thing that would do would send a message to the players. Hey, listen, we know that it's messed up there, that you've lost faith and a little bit of confidence in Gase, and we're here and we're supporting your way of thinking, I guess, is what you're feeling. If the team is that upset and is in that much disarray, then maybe it does help a little bit. But in general, I agree with you. I agree that, it serves no purpose to have an interim coach come in. It's not like it's going to put them in a position to go to the playoffs. So, but in Adam Gase's situation, maybe it sends a message to the players. Hey, we hear you. We know that the locker room's messed up, that he's not communicating with you well, and we're behind you. But Jack, that falls not just on the coach, that falls on the GM, that falls on the owner. I mean, that falls on the organization. And the reason why Pittsburgh Steelers, the Seattle Seahawks, the New Orleans Saints are always in the mix is because they have a strong organization that helps the coaches, that keeps the coaches, that keeps them happy, and it, as a player going to those teams, that they're the boss. There's no question that they're the boss, and you either better do as they say and fall in line with the way that team goes, or you're leaving. And this is the successful teams in the NFL, Jack. These are not the teams that, like the Dolphins were, like the Giants have been the last few years, like the Jets have been, and some of the other struggling teams that, you go in there and that the coach may or may not have the full confidence of the organization.
You make an interesting point about the owner, and no one has talked about this at all, and I'm going to mention this point. The Jet owner's Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson accepted a position from Donald Trump to be the ambassador to England. Okay.
Right.
And that's where his energy is going right now. Is he paying attention to the Jets from a distance? Obviously, I'm sure he is, but he's not around the team. He left it up to his brother to oversee things. So it would be interesting if Woody Johnson was here in New York the whole time with the team, overseeing things, catching the flack of the team really not being good and so on. Would he have made a move by now? But we can't say Adam Gase has necessarily lost the locker room. There's maybe no locker room. There's no locker room leadership to begin with.
I agree.
I mean, it's not that the players might be arguing with one another. The talent might just not be there. Maybe
But again,
they
Jack,
are going out. Maybe they're playing very hard each game. We can't say they're not.
but
It might be a case of them just simply not being good enough.
But again, Jack, that's the responsibility of the coach to get those leaders. When the Giants won those Super Bowls and other teams, when they the Patriots, whatever it is, the coach knows who the players out there are, the ones that are controlling the team on the field, that are the ones that the other players look out for or look up to. And the faith of the leadership, talking like with Tom Coughlin, when he formed that leadership committee with Michael Strahan and other players there, he knew he was having problems communicating his message because he was such a hard, strict.
Mac,
Wait a minute. Let me
Strahan,
finish.
no one on the Jets could pass to him.
Jack, let me finish. So if Tom Coughlin was smart enough to say, hey, listen, I got to change my approach to the team because I'm kind of maybe losing the team. So I'm going to get the players around here that can communicate to the other players on the team what I want, and maybe I make some concessions because I'm not listening well enough to all the players. So it's up to the coach to make that bridge to the other players, and Adam Gase hasn't done that yet, Jack.
Who are his leaders? Has Sam Darnold really established himself as a leader? The jury's still out whether he's going to be their franchise quarterback. For now, that's the plan. They're going to keep sticking with him for now. Le'Veon Bell, the potential was there for him to be a leader, star player from another team coming to the Jets. You want to get him on board to get the locker room together. And that's what he tried to do in the beginning.
Yeah.
But a leader has to be one of your impact players. You're not going to get a field goal kicker, special team player, or an average player to be the leader. It has to be one of your better players.
Agreed.
You talk about Tom Coughlin. He was running into difficulty personality-wise with his players. They were disgruntled. They were mad. He got his leadership council together. And when you get guys like Michael Strahan, Eli Manning on your side, now you've got the power. If those guys like you, those guys are going to swear by you. Those guys have your back. There's not going to be dissension with the rest of the team because those, especially in the case of Michael Strahan, those are powerful personalities. I remember with the Ravens, I mean, they would rely on Ray Lewis to control the locker room there because Ray Lewis had such a dynamic personality. And if the coach wanted something done, he wanted a player to toe the line who wasn't doing it, he would speak to Ray Lewis and the other veterans in the locker room, and they would get it all straightened out. I mean, that was even the culture with the New York Yankees for a lot of years, player attitudes. Darryl Strawberry was out of control with the Mets, completely out of control, but they kept him around because he was a great player with the Mets, his talent, so on. So you don't just get rid of a guy like that. But he would just say bleep you to Davy Johnson all the time, get into fights with his teammates and the whole thing. Then he comes to the Yankees. The Yankee culture with Joe Torre, Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada. All of a sudden, Darryl Strawberry is a different man. He toed the line. He knew what his place was in that team, in that organization.
And
there's no leader, there's no impact players there right now.
So what I think, Jack, again, that is the head coach, and a coaching staff's responsibility to form some kind of committee where they can at least communicate with the players, and that's not being done right now, Jack.
Well,
So I don't,
yeah.
I don't think it's the players' fault. It's the coach's fault, and I think that's why they're having problems holding on to these other players that want to get out of there. It's not just because the Jets are losing; it's because of the way that the ship is running right now.
Mac, the Jets have 11 games to go. They're 0-5. Let's say the Jets go 6-5 the rest of the way, 7-4. It's going to create a mirage the way it did last year when they went 6-2 over their last 8 games. They finished at 7-9, poor record, but people were looking at the 6-2, thinking, the Jets are headed in the right direction and an upswing.
Right.
And that's the danger in keeping Adam Gase around right now. Even though I'm all for letting him finish out the season, I'm concerned if the Jets actually start playing good ball, unless you feel they truly on an upswing, unless you feel they've truly turned it around. But didn't we feel that way last year, that there's a little potential that maybe they even could contend for the AFC Eastern Division title this year? With the Patriots slipping, the Jets just might go 9-7, and that might put them in the mix. A
lot of people, especially Jet fans, thought that the division was open this year. I don't know what gave them that idea with Buffalo being there and the Patriots just being the Patriots. But a lot of people felt, and I was hoping, just being a New York fan and a local fan, that the Jets had some kind of answer from the beginning of last year. And we find out again, Jack, and I think it's not just – and to me, that's an organization problem. That's an organization problem that they can't hold on to certain players. I mean, you look at Bobby Jack. Their draft picks aren't really stepping up and playing. They got Beckham there. Beckham there for that offensive tackle. He might be a good one later on. They kind of brought a bunch of free agents on the line to see if they would mold. That's hard to do, especially in 1 year. And their defense has lost its personality totally. So it's an organization. It's scouting, Jack. It's the management. It's the player personnel reps. It's the coaching. And I kind of feel bad for the Jets players there because, if to make professional football, Jack, to make it as a professional football player, you have talent. I don't want to hear that teams are not as talented as other teams. Listen, to make it to that level, to play at that level, to be the best college football player at that position in the country, to be drafted, you have talent. So they're not building talent, they're not utilizing talent, they're not grooming talent, and they're sure not putting together some kind of scheme and some kind of schedule to get these players up to speed.
Adam Gase was brought on board as the Jet head coach in large part because he was considered the quarterback guru who was going to help Sam Darnold. Okay.
Right.
And I'm not qualified to say how good a quarterback type coach Adam Gase would be, what kind of help he could be to a quarterback. But I am qualified to say this. You get rid of your quarterback's best offensive weapon in Robbie Anderson,
right?
Okay, and get inferior men in the wide receiver position. I just don't see the logic behind the move. I mean, the offense should have been built around Sam Darnold if you want him to take his the next step. And, they just haven't done it. They haven't been creative. And I just don't understand what direction they're going in right now. I mean, I don't see the plan. Obviously, the plan's to win, but I just don't see the building blocks in place. Right. Now, maybe some of the players are developing quietly that we can't see on the surface, but if you're a Jet fan, there's no reason for optimism. That's the thing. You want optimism. The Giant fan has some optimism with Joe Judge. Joe Judge, if nothing else, seems to be completely in control of that team. He has them playing hard each week. It hasn't translated into victories, but they've been there at the end of the game a couple of times. I mean, in 3 of their losses, they were there at the end of the game. The pass against the Chicago Bears in the end zone at the end of the game, had that been complete, they would have won that game. They should have won the Cowboy game, but for meaningless penalties. they went to LA and they played the Rams really, really tough.
Sure.
So, I mean, they've been there, and eventually they'll turn it around, and those losses are going to become wins down the line if this progression continues. But the Jets are falling into the category that's most scary, and that's being non-competitive. When you're non-competitive, it's bad. You lose a lot of competitive games, but you have a plan. That's okay. You know, that could be tolerated. You have to see more or less the light at the end of the tunnel. You see that with the Giants. You don't see it with the Jets.
So Jack, let's go to the rest of the games, and then we'll go back to the locals and really get in depth on the game.
You really want to go back to the locals, Matt?
Yes, we will.
About New England.
Yes, we will. We will, Jack. We're going to cover them at least the games.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at real quick at the Bears and the Panthers. The Bears are playing pretty good ball. I mean, they're in most of their games. They're competitive. The Panthers have improved every week, and it looks like Rule has got them playing some good, solid ball. They're running the ball. They beat the Cardinals. Their defense is playing better. That's one of the coaches we had a chance of getting. Rule played a little shenanigans at the end of the interview, and at calling reports where he called the Giants after he interviewed with the Panthers to see if the Giants would match their offer. The Giants told him to go kick rocks. So we got the Bears, who got a good defense. Their running game is average. Their quarterback, Nick Foles, he had a little problems last game, but at the end he brought him back. And the Panthers have improved every week. Who do you like on this game, Jack?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go with the Bears to win that game because the Bears have an elite defense. They really have an elite defense led by Khalil Mack. And the Bears are 4-1. They're very quiet 4-1 this year.
Yeah.
When you think of it, the Bears have been a pleasant surprise. And the Bears, though, we talk about moving forward. We talked about quarterbacks a little while ago, that most teams are set with their quarterback of the future. You get the feeling with the Bears, this is still patchwork. I mean, Nick Foles is now the starter. And the idea that he would overtake Mitch Trubisky while the Bears were winning, okay? 2 years from now, I can't see either guy there as the Bears quarterback. They're going to have to address the situation at some point. But for this year, I mean, it's their defense that's going to have to carry them at the end of the day. And for Carolina, you know, with Matt Rule over there, I mean, they're a work in progress. And with Teddy Bridgewater, they gave him a nice contract, so on, which makes you kind of wonder when you mentioned getting back to the local teams. What happens if the Jets never moved on from Teddy Bridgewater? They had him.
Yeah.
They could have signed him. They let him go to New Orleans as a backup, where he reestablished his value after being a good starter with the Vikings and having a horrendous injury. And then he was able to sign with Carolina, but they wouldn't have had to give up those draft picks for Sam Darnold. So it makes you wonder, had they just stuck with Teddy Bridgewater as a starter, would they have been better off? But I'm being a Monday morning, you know, let's call it a Sunday morning quarterback.
Yeah, right.
You know, now, but I like the Bears in that game.
I'm going to go with the Panthers, Jack. I think they got something going there. I think the Bears 4-1 is not legit yet. I'll have to see in a few more games if they are a legitimate, at least wild card contender. I don't believe that yet. I like the Panthers. So we got the Lions and the Jags, both teams struggling. I just think the Lions with Matt Stafford should win this game. Matt Stafford is a very, very underrated quarterback. He's had some great years. They haven't built the Lions around Stafford, just like they did with Barry Sanders, where they had Barry Sanders and they didn't build a team around him. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards a couple times. He's a good quarterback. I even watched him live against the Giants. He has a gun for an arm, and he's pretty smart. He's been in the league for a while. I'm looking for the Lions to beat the Jags, Jack.
Well, if you talk about NFL teams, the Jaguars have about as much charisma amongst the NFL teams as a holder has on a team.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jaguars, to think that they were so close to going to the Super Bowl like 3 years ago or so. Matthew Stafford, it drives you crazy with that team with the Lions. Are they ever going to take the next step? They're certainly not taking it this year at 1-3, and they haven't given him the right weapons. I mean, I shouldn't say they haven't given him the right weapons over the years, because they have. He's had some good, pieces around him, and in those years, the defense would let down. And Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks. You wonder, had he gone to another franchise over his career, how it would have turned out.
Right.
I mean, he might be a Hall of Famer as is. He might get there. When they look at the guy's numbers, it's going to be undeniable. But even Phillip Rivers, all those years as the San Diego Charger quarterback, he was in the mix for going to a Super Bowl. And in Matthew Stafford, it's year after year. We'd have some hope for the Lions. And then when Matt Patricia became the coach, coming from New England, they were finally supposed to take that leap, and it hasn't turned out that way. And there've been so many heartbreaking losses,
Yeah,
during his tenure.
Jack, we had that.
I'll still like the Lions in the game.
We had that
Jaguars to beat anyone.
We had that debate about the best player on the worst team, and Matt Stafford could have been.
Stafford, but we were sticking low. We're sticking in the East Coast area.
Right. But I mean, in general,
Stafford would be for the NFL.
Yeah.
You can make that argument. The last 10 years or whatever, the best player who's been on the worst team. Lions haven't been absolutely horrendous. The Lions had a chance. They were drafting high this year. They could have taken Justin Herbert. They could have taken Tua or Herbert.
Yeah.
They could have taken either guy. And considering that Stafford is a veteran quarterback, and we don't know how many years he has left. I'm not saying he's slowing down. I was thinking during that draft, where teams have to gamble, I was thinking they just should have taken Tua. They would have been better off in the long run. But
Stafford got that big injury last year that set him down. I don't know. Maybe that was just his team showing a little faith and loyalty to him. I don't know. I think it would have been wise to pick up maybe a quarterback, but they got so many holes over there in the Lions, Jack. I mean, so many players so many positions they need to upgrade that maybe that's what they were thinking. So we got the Falcons and the Vikings. Some people in the beginning of the year picked the Vikings to win that division, Jack, and they're having problems. The Falcons fired their head coach, and I don't know if that's going to make the Falcons any better, but that's the game we got. Who do you like there, Jack?
Don't go to sleep on the Vikings, even though they're 1-4. If we're going to eliminate the 49ers, who are 2-3, I can make an argument the Vikings are the best team in the NFL right now with a losing record. I think they're going to rebound. I think they're going to rebound and play really well the rest of the season. There were some hopes for the Falcons early in the year. They're 0-5. They fired Dan Quinn. They have a new coach this week. Is the team going to be fired up? Is this a new beginning? I mean, there wasn't talk about the Falcon players being that disillusioned with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's problem wasn't in the locker room. His game decisions would sometimes be baffling, okay? And the Texans, as we saw last week with Romeo Crennel, were all fired up having their new coach. They couldn't wait to get on the field. I don't know if that's going to be the case with the Falcons. I mean, the Vikings should win the game. And Falcons, you could say, well, they're better than their record says. They're 0-5. I mean, how can you I hear that argument they're better than their record indicates.
Yeah.
But tell me about a team that's 0-5 and tell me they're worse than their record indicates. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, you could make an argument for a couple of those teams, Jack. We got
the
Texans.
Jets are worse than their 0-5 record indicates. Okay.
I wasn't gonna say it, Jack. Texans. You talked about the Texans against the Titans. The Titans win a big one against the Bills. Houston fired their head coach, as you said. I don't know, Jack. I think that Tennessee is a better, well-rounded team than the Texans. I think that if you put both teams together and you looked at every area of the team, the Tennessee is a little bit better, almost on every squad on both sides of the ball. Texas has a puncher's shot. They got an exciting quarterback over there. They're a little fired up, as you said. I think Tennessee wins.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give an edge to Tennessee, but Houston's in a desperate position. I mean, they're 1-4. Tennessee at 4. No, they can afford to lose the game. And they're going to lose, they're going to lose some games this season. They have 12 games to go. They're not going unbeaten. They're not a powerhouse, but they are a legitimate threat to the Kansas City Chiefs or whoever else is in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl. And I love Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
As I said, but we're not around these teams. We don't know what's going on in the locker room. We don't know what Bill O'Brien being let go by the Texans is. JJ Watt rallying the troops, okay? And Deshaun Watson, is he given a little more freedom to do some things he couldn't do before? We don't know how it plays out in a game like that. Tennessee, they won their game last Tuesday night, upsetting the Buffalo Bills, looking really good. And they did it with an erratic practice schedule because of COVID and the game being put off. Them more than any other team in the NFL, because the Titans had problems with people in their front office that was causing delays in their practice schedule.
Sure.
So maybe them beating the Bills was a little bit of an aberration, even though we don't want to think that. And if that was a little bit of an aberration, that's going to show up against the Texans. But you got to give the Titans an edge there.
Jack, Tennessee is one of the teams that I feel is so underrated, especially coming in this year. We talked about, not we personally, but everybody was talking about, of course, the Chiefs. They were talking about the Ravens. Everybody, big deal about Tampa Bay with Brady going down there. A big deal. Seattle, of course, is a favorite. And the Titans were in the championship last year. They destroyed Houston. They destroyed the Ravens in the playoff game. They beat the heck out of the Ravens. And I watched this team work. I think that Vrabel has done an unbelievable job with this team. Their zone blocking is better than any offensive. You can have the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. You can have some of the better offensive lines in the league. And I brought this up with Anthony about the offensive line. We talk about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry doesn't get touched sometimes until he's 8 yards downfield. And when he's 8 yards downfield, that big man on those safeties and those cornerbacks is just unfair. And this, if you get a chance, if you love watching schemes and strategy in football, and it's called zone blocking, Jack, where you're not hitting the guy, you're hitting the area and the guy that comes in that area, and you're peeling back to make blocks to open up a huge gap that the running back then picks. Joe Morris did a lot with the Giants way back when they went to the Super Bowls. And what they do is, in unison, the offensive line moves on a snap of the ball to the left or the right, and the center, the guards, and the tackles are moving into an area and filling in these areas, and anybody in that area gets a helmet put on. And what's great about this is that when the running back gets the ball deep in the offensive backfield, they can read the hole. They can cut back, or they can go outside if the outside block is made. It's a very hard scheme to teach. It's very hard to have the offensive line moving in unison like that and block into an area. Tennessee does it better than I've ever seen in a long time. And whoever the offensive line coach is for Tennessee, I would love to have him for head coach on a football team, Jack.
I'll tell you, Derrick Henry's a workhorse. Last year, he basically carried the offense. He didn't have that good a game against the Bills, and the Titan offense was fine, which is a good sign, for Tennessee and so on. And Ryan Tannehill is playing with a ton of confidence under Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, against the Bills, they flushed him out of the pocket. They forced him to run for a touchdown. He didn't want to run. And then when he crosses the goal line, he couldn't stop laughing on the sideline.
Yeah.
It's like you forced him to take the money. It's like you put the money in his pocket. You know what I mean? He said, no, I don't want this. And you force it, and the guy's figuring, I didn't even, whatever. But Tennessee, Mike Vrabel, when we talk about the top coaches in the NFL, his name's got to start coming into the discussion as much as anyone. I mean, and he was under Bill Belichick as a player, and and he's a natural with Tennessee. I mean, it's like they might be the dark horse in the AFC going into this year. Maybe some like myself discounted their chances. They came one game away from going to the Super Bowl and last year. And, maybe they're primed to go back there again this year. And they've certainly got off to that type of start.
Well, you talk about Tannehill laughing on the sideline. That may have something to do with his touchdown celebration. When he tried to do a finger roll and almost killed himself jumping in the air, he almost fell down and like to break his neck. And if I was Vrabel, I would have went over to him at that time and said, "Do not do that again." He almost hurt himself, Jack. So I think they were making fun of him on the sideline. He was kind of laughing at himself. And, that was crazy. So one more game we got to talk about before we get to locals, and that's the Cowboys and the Cardinals, Jack. Andy Dalton, now the starter. Kyle Murray leads a high-powered offense where he's like he's a little scat back that can throw the ball 80 yards. He's an unbelievable athlete. The Cowboys never seem to get it together. I blame Jerry Jones for this, and this is why I'm going to tell you why, Jack. After every game, whether they win or they lose, Jerry Jones is always the focal point of where the press goes. He's got to be on camera. He's got his little Disneyland out there at his stadium where they have showgirls and I don't know what else. His wife decorates the stadium. To me, the Cowboys' problem is with the owner. This man is all about himself. He loves to be on camera. He loves to talk. He's not like the other owners of the league that, stay back, let the team run. They may show a shot of them now and then when another team scores or they score. But Jerry Jones, the camera is on this man constantly. And I wish that that Jerry Jones respected or was an authority figure over Jerry Jones, which there's not. But I wish someone could come and tell him, hey, listen, just be quiet. Let the team play. Let the coaches coach and get the heck out of the spotlight and put the spotlight on the team where it belongs, Jack.
Mac, we're the ones that put him on camera. I don't think Jerry Jones says, put the camera on me. I mean, what's he supposed to do? He's in his box. He's a charismatic owner. And there's some owners like that, for good or bad. We pay attention to them, okay? And it's, listen, as bad as the Cowboys are on their problems, they're 2-3. And that crazy NFC East in first place. They're half game ahead of the Eagles, who are 1-2-1.
Right.
Heck, they're only one game ahead of the pathetic Redskins, who are 1-4. And had the Giants won last week, wow, the Giants would only been a half game out of first place. That division is still up for grabs. I mean, even a team like the Giants could start winning games. We said before 7-9 might do it. The Cowboys' problem isn't Jerry Jones. It's an awful defense. Awful defense. One of the worst in the league. And unlike sports like baseball, where you could make some deals in season, you can't make a substantial deal that's going to help you in the NFL. Even if some good defensive players become available, how are you going to manage that with the cap? It's a bad situation. Their defensive coordinator, Mike Nolan, had been out of the league for years. And Mike McCarthy wanted him to be his man, to run the defense. And it hasn't worked out. It just hasn't worked out. But listen, they're still in a dogfight. In first place, will play the games. But if they can't beat a team like the Cardinals, who aren't a bad team, I really like Kyler Murray a lot. And DeAndre Hopkins has been all that's been advertised. Larry Fitzgerald, future Hall of Famer, is at the tail end of his career, but the leadership he provides, his presence is very comforting. He's been a career Cardinal, which is nice. And this is probably his last year. And it's going to be nice to see him retire as a Cardinal as well. But let's see how the Cowboy defense can respond to Kyler Murray today. Because Kyler Murray is, if you take away Lamar Jackson, he's probably the best running quarterback in the NFL.
That's a good point.
The Oakland Athletics drafted him to play baseball.
Great athlete.
Great athlete. And his progression has been very good so far in the
Yeah.
second year. It's really been good. And let's see how the Cowboys can respond to a quarterback who can do a lot of different things. So far, they haven't responded to any quarterback, but
Right. I mean,
see.
I
I
mean,
like the
Jack,
Cardinals in that game.
well, yeah, I think they got an edge too. I mean, the only thing the Cowboys have going for them is if they watched the Carolina game last week, Carolina ran on the Cardinals and ran really well, and they kind of bottled up Kyle Murray somewhat. Kyle Murray can strike with Hopkins and that receiving core, and he can run with the ball, as we all know. So you do have a high. You got to keep him off the field. I think the Panthers did that last week. It was a great game plan. If the Cowboys use Zeke Elliott and they pound the ball, and they got another good running back behind him. His name slips me right now, but they do have a decent running back behind him. If they can kind of take Kyle Murray off the field, pound the ball on the Cardinals like the Panthers did. They have just a good, if not better, running back in Zeke. If they can control the game, Jack, I think the Cowboys have a chance at winning this. I don't think they will. I think that Kyle Murray, I think the Cowboys for some reason are throw happy, and they just love to throw the ball down the field without using Zeke as much as they should. All that
Zeke
money
hasn't been the same player since his rookie year. I understand he was hurt, this, that. But the pressures on Zeke Elliott may be more than any one single play on that team. You know what you have in Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton can be an effective passer, so on. But if Zeke Elliott isn't performing at the top of his game and the pressure's on Andy Dalton to pass more, that's not going to be a good thing for the Cowboys.
I agree, Jack. And again, please, Jerry Jones, please be quiet. Just be quiet. Just let the coach
How
do the.
about we just focus on Jerry in the box and get his
and don't even watch the game. Yeah, just watch his reactions. They pretty much do that already. So, Jack, we got the Patriots. The Patriots playing the Broncos coming up here. Listen, I think the Broncos are a decent team. I think that the Broncos, if the Patriots kind of sleep a little bit this game, that the Broncos can sneak up and bite them. I think the Patriots should beat the Broncos, no problem. Cam is back. They're going to play the COVID scare. They just announced that yesterday. The facility is back open. The Patriot-Bronco game is on. The Broncos, almost an average team. They're getting close to being average. The Patriots, big game for them. If they win today, if they win and the Bills lose to the Chiefs, I think there's a tie for first place. The Patriots have got to come up, and they got to be concentrating. I believe Bill Belichick will make sure of that, and I think that they should beat the Broncos, Jack.
I'm sure the Patriots have hopes of winning the division, positioning themselves for the playoffs. I don't think they're thinking along those lines. I think they're taking it a game at a time. They need a win here, and they're positioning for the playoffs. If they make it, it's going to take care of itself. And no one's talking, we talk about Cam Newton coming back and playing. It just shows you how much of the hype goes into certain quarterback situations. No one's talking about Drew Lock, the Bronco quarterback coming off an injury. He's going to be playing because Drew Lock is now their franchise quarterback.
Right.
Going forward, Denver's not looking to upgrade in the quarterback position. The job is Drew Lock's, okay?
Right.
Denver also has a good defense. They've had their share of injuries. Who hasn't in the NFL? And you said it best. Denver just could sneak up on them and upset them. Sony Michel, he's out, the excellent running back for the New England Patriots. He's out because of the COVID situation, from what I understand. And game day becomes very unusual this year in the NFL. Normally, we'd know early in the week whether the guy's injured, what the chances are of him playing that following Sunday.
Right.
Now, the day before, a player could be around someone who had COVID. He could test positive himself and get pulled from the lineup. So it's kind of like musical chairs this year, more so than any other year I saw in the NFL, as far as who's going to play, who's not going to play. It's so unpredictable.
Definitely agree with that, Jack. I think the Patriots should win this game, and I think this is
They should, but
yeah.
it's not at the gimme that the point spread that I believe is 9.5 points the last time I saw.
I agree with that.
I don't think it's that extreme, though. It shouldn't be.
Okay, Jack, we got the Eagles and the Ravens in a very interesting game. The Eagles last week showed a little signs of life at the end of the Pittsburgh game, even though Pittsburgh did beat them. They're having a little problems with their defense. They normally have a strong defense. Their defense isn't playing as well as it did the last couple of years. Wentz played okay at the end of the game. I don't see the Eagles beating the Ravens on paper anyway. The Ravens should run on that Eagles defense, take the lead, and that should be it. But again, Jack, I mean, the Eagles did look good at the end of the game against the Steelers. If Wentz gets hot, if that defense can contain Lamar Jackson, they have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagle defense hasn't been good this year, and you kind of wonder them letting Malcolm Jenkins go, and he went to New Orleans. I mean, what that meant for the defense, just what Malcolm Jenkins provided, as well as leadership, I think was a very valuable thing to that team. And I don't know, is it the question of the defense lacking an identity now that they would have had more of if Malcolm Jenkins was still there? Because it seems every time the Eagles struggle, it's the Carson Wentz soap opera starting, you know? And Carson Wentz is their franchise quarterback, so we've got to leave it alone. Jalen Hurts, who was a second-round draft pick, isn't the answer to come in right now anyway. Maybe down the road, if it's not working out with Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts gets in and they go to him. I mean, Jalen Hurts, a very likable individual, and I think could be a good quality NFL quarterback, but Carson Wentz is in the position. I think the story's more with the Ravens. If they lose this game, we have to have some doubts as far as them being a Super Bowl contender, because there was two teams that stood out in the AFC as far as being favorites to go to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, by virtue of winning it last year, were generally considered the favorites, but right on their heels were the Baltimore Ravens. And Baltimore, they're like bubble burst in that loss to the Chiefs. When Lamar Jackson says, well, the Chiefs are our kryptonite, that was like Pedro Martinez saying about the Yankees, they're my daddy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That doesn't do a team that well psychologically, thinking, well, there's one team better than us. Now, if the Ravens should lose to the Eagles and Lamar Jackson's happy the way the offense is functioning, you could see the situation starting to slowly crumble for the Ravens. Not that they won't be a playoff team, but all of a sudden they'll fall a little behind Tennessee maybe, and maybe a little behind Buffalo on the depth chart of teams who you see going to the Super Bowl. So I think the Ravens need to reestablish themselves. I was going to say against a good team, something the Eagles aren't right now, but a team, a high-profile team, let's call the Eagles that, and the Ravens need to really take care of business, win that game, win it decisively, reestablish themselves as a viable Super Bowl contender. Beating teams like the Redskins, which they did, doesn't do that. But
that's true, Jack. That's true. But I do think that the Eagles, if they win this game, it's a huge statement. It's a statement to the Cowboys and the rest of the NFC East. So I mean, hey, listen. Hopefully they can come up and.
The Eagles are back. They beat the Ravens, and the Ravens are still an elite team.
Sure.
If the Eagles do that today, they send the message that maybe their early season difficulties are behind them, and they're the Philadelphia Eagle team that we've known about from the Super Bowl year, making the playoffs after that. So
yeah. So I think I mean, they can't just compete against the Ravens like they did with the Steelers. To make that statement, they have to beat the Ravens, and that's a big task. We got the Jets. Give the Jets fans some hope, Jack. Come on. I mean, they're going up against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are still a building team. They're going against Ryan Fitzpatrick, who can have very bad games. He can have great games. He can have very bad games. The Jets with Flacco, again, maybe the line starts kind of gelling for the Jets, the offensive line. Maybe them free agents come together. Maybe Flacco has, a flashback to 2000, not to 2000, but to the last Super Bowl he was with the Ravens. Maybe, Jack, give us a little hope.
Listen, the Jets are probably going to win a game this year. It's hard to say they're going to go 0-16 at some point. Maybe they'll win a few games. I mean, they're more likely not to win altogether than win a few games the way things are right now. The Dolphins are just a team on the rise. The Jets aren't. For a given day, can the Jets beat them? Maybe if Sam Darnold was in there. I just don't like Joe Flacco at this point in his career. Listen, I would have gotten Colin Kaepernick as a backup sooner than Joe Flacco. I'm serious. And Kaepernick's been out of the league a while. And Joe Flacco, people forget, when he left the Ravens, he lost his starting job to Lamar Jackson. No disgrace there.
Right.
His performance with the Ravens was slipping, and then Lamar Jackson took over, and the team that year is the quarterback. And then at the end of the year, Joe Flacco went to the Denver Broncos. John Elway got him. And what's amazing about John Elway, great quarterback, but knows nothing about quarterback talent. He got Joe Flacco, he got Case Keenum, he got this guy, he got that guy, and it hasn't worked out. Maybe it will with Drew Lock, who basically fell into his lap in the second round of the draft. But Joe Flacco couldn't get it done at Denver, and he was handed the job. He was ineffective there. And he took a job with the Jets behind Sam Darnold. What's the reason for that? He's not going to unseat Sam Darnold as the starter.
Jack, the reason why they got Flacco was for experience, to help Darnold read defenses, to maybe make the get up there and make the audible calls and read defenses, and that was the only reason that
I know that. But why did Flacco go to the Jets? He didn't have to. If you have the ambitions to still be a starter in the NFL, you go to a situation where you could be a starter. Listen, Jameis Winston went from Tampa Bay. They let him go when they got Brady to the New Orleans Saints. Now, he wasn't going to start over Drew Brees.
Right.
He knew that, but he took a look, and the team told him, Drew's probably playing one more year than going to the booth. You play behind him. You'll learn from a great quarterback. It'll help you. You'll get used to our system. And after a year here, there's a good chance you're going to be our starter next year.
Yeah.
But Joe Flacco struck me as taking the backup job with the Jets. He wanted a job, wanted a paycheck. It's comfortable. It's not the worst thing. Some NFL players, quarterbacks, might be happy to be in the backup role.
Yeah,
okay, because they get the paycheck, they have the job. You got to do something with your life, Mac. They're not going to sit around despite Flacco making enough money to retire and live comfortably. You still like the idea of a competitive situation. You still like the idea of being in an NFL work environment.
Yeah, I just said.
But the problem is you do get thrown into games sometimes when that starter gets injured. And Joe Flacco says without much conviction, I still think I could start in the NFL. I still think I could get it done. I'm still confident in my abilities. I mean, we hear that all the time. Joe Flacco just doesn't have it anymore.
So let's go from worst to first in the local area. Let's talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills against the Chiefs, Jack. And let's not go too long because we still got the Giants game we got to review. Buffalo Bills.
Very quickly, what a game that is. Both teams coming off losses. Wow, intriguing game.
Yeah, I of course I went with the Dolphins going ahead and beating the Jets. With the Bills and the Chiefs, I'm not sure, Jack. I think this can go either way. I think that the Bills defense has got to play better. They've got to come up with a better system. A lot of we had Sal Capaccio on the Bills reporter, and he spoke about a lot of injuries and people coming back this week. Injuries to me, is not an excuse. It is partly a reason, but the team still has to be ready to play. I don't think the Bills were ready to play the Titans. I know they'll be ready to play the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs are going to want to win this game because they've looked pretty bad in the last 2 games, Jack. Who do you think? Who do you got here? You got the Bills or the Chiefs?
I'm gonna tell you, I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl in the beginning of the year. I picked them to beat the LA Rams in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Okay. I don't just tell my picks at the end of the year. I like to say them all along.
Sure.
But they are going to have some bumps during the regular season. I just get that feeling Buffalo's defense is going to respond today, and they're actually going to upset the Chiefs. People think, well, the Chiefs are coming off a loss. They're going to be fired up. I'm not sure to what extent. In the long run, I think when we get to the playoffs, Kansas City is going to have it all together, assuming they don't have, devastating injury to Patrick Mahomes that keeps them out. That Kansas City is going to have it all together, and they're going to repeat as Super Bowl champions. Both teams coming off a loss. I really liked this Bill team last year. I don't understand what happened against Tennessee. I just can't. Josh Allen made certain mistakes. Ball's going through receivers' hands there. Touted defense playing really poorly. I look for squeak. I'm going to go with Buffalo to, beat them, maybe even an overtime game.
Yeah.
But then I think Kansas City will have it together. I haven't given up on them by any means, and they're going to repeat as Super Bowl champs. But for this week, it's going. Buffalo is going to edge them out.
I like the Chiefs, but I'm rooting hard for Buffalo, Jack. The New York Giants against the Washington Redskins. Somebody's going to get a win today, Jack.
It will be the New York Giants.
Yes, and I believe this is if the Giants lose this game, Jack. I'll keep rooting for the Giants, but I'm not even going to think of them taking that next step to maybe a 6-win team this year. They got to beat the Skins.
Listen, what do you think of this idea, Matt?
They're more talented. They're more talented. They got a better overall team. There's no reason why they shouldn't win this game. Go ahead, Jack.
There's no reason they shouldn't, and they should. They've lost competitive games. The Redskins won their first game of the year. They beat the Eagles. And when they beat the Eagles in week 1, I was, wow, this Redskin team is better than I thought because the Redskins actually have a decent defense.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow, if the offense can just be so-so with the defense they have, the Redskins might actually, go 8-8, 9-7, which I didn't see before the season began. But now we know that victory over the Eagles won much. It was all relative to who they were playing. I didn't really, know that at the time. Funny thing about the Dwayne Haskins situation, he was told to stay home. That's a mysterious situation. And Kyle Allen getting hurt and Alex Smith coming in the game, which is a heartwarming comeback after his horrendous injury.
Great story.
I cringe at the idea of Alex Smith even playing. Why would you want to come back at this stage in your career? You're not coming back to a team with Super Bowl ambitions where you could, get that ring and so on.
You know what that is, Jack? That's just competitiveness of a football player. As you know, with a boxer, a lot of them retire too late or make comebacks that shouldn't make comebacks, and they should just leave well enough alone. I think it's something personal inside of people that want to prove that they still can do it. And to get to that level, Jack, in any sport, you have to kind of have that attitude. So that's what I believe is going on over there with them. So what we're going to do, Jack, and that's on my producer, who is me. So I really believe, Jack, that the Giants should win this game, and we'll be enjoying this Sunday with the rest of you. We'll be back Wednesday, Jack. We have a special guest lined up Wednesday. He's a singer that hasn't been discovered yet, so we're going to have him on. And let him sing for us and see what happens.
Hey, I'm all for it.
He's a country.
We're the only sports show that has singers on it too.
Right. And besides, Sunday Night Football that has their leading singers in here. And his name, I'm going to get to his name real quick. He has a CD out there right now. His name is Jimmy. He's He's a college kid looking to become a Nashville country star.
Wow,
So
cool.
hey, listen, he's got a CD out on Amazon right now and at Google. So we'll give him a lot of.
Matt, get a verbal commitment that if his career takes off, he comes back to the show. Get that verbal commitment that we hold him to, that we can maybe use one of his songs on the show if he becomes a major star.
I definitely agree with that, Jack. It's been a great show, Jack. Thanks for coming on and hosting it with me again. And thanks to Anthony Cervino for coming in and giving us his fantasy update. We'll see you all Wednesday. Have a great day. Enjoy your football. And again, we'll see you Wednesday. This is the Mac and Jack.
Dodgers will win today, and the Giants will win today, and the Jets will lose.
Excellent, Jack. I love predictions, and I hope you're right. Jack, have a great 2 days off, and enjoy football today. And we'll see you all Wednesday, 8 to 10, here on the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Have a great day, everybody.